Amazing. Hello, welcome. Thank you to our Behind the Board with the Game Makers. We'll be talking you through, you saw the production of it in this lovely documentary, and now we have everybody who was behind the scenes to talk a bit more about how it all came to be. So for today, I will be your host. My name is Tyler. I am the Director of Product Development at Panda Game Manufacturing, and I'll be your host for today, and we'll go down the line and introduce ourselves.
I'm Renee Harris. I'm the former Program and Licensing Manager at Bézier Games, and now I'm currently at Panda as the Director of International Partnerships.
My name is Jay Bernardo. I am the Marketing Manager for Bézier Games.
I'm Ted Alspach. I'm the CEO of Bézier Games.
I'm Ben Rossett. I'm the designer of the Game Makers.
And this is really special because I actually didn't know that Ted and Ben would be joining us. So this is like really special because I actually asked for it for a long time when I knew we were doing this. So like, yeah, it's a lovely surprise. So thank you so much because I have so many things to talk about today. But to start, this is interesting because we're now at Gen Con in 2026, but this whole process began in Gen Con 2023, right? So I'd love, Renee, if you could tell us.
This process began in my living room in 2020.
Correction. We're going to start with Renee, though, because, yeah, her story is more interesting. No. We're going to get to that, Ben. We will absolutely get to that for sure. So, but this first came to light at Gen Con 2023, and Ben was there, so don't worry. But tell us about how and maybe even Ben can tell us how this came about.
So this is a Ben and Ted start the story.
I didn't mean to jump in and steal the thunder.
It's okay. Have all the thunder, Ben.
Well, I was a project manager and director of HR at Panda for about 10 years, and I was still at Panda as a project manager in 2023, and so I took Ted and Renee out to lunch as as a Panda client, so just took Bézier out to lunch, and then meanwhile I also had this little game in my backpack that I thought might be a good fit for them as a game designer. So we had lunch, and I said, hey, before we leave, I want to talk to you about this game that I've been making that I think you might be a good fit for as a publisher, and kind of explain the concept of the Game Makers to them, and that was Gen Con 2023.
I think the funny thing about that is we didn't expect Ben to pitch us a game at all, but when he got to the point of telling Renee and myself that each of these components can be used two different ways, either as a component for a game you're building or as an element to enhance and make your factory better, and then he described it in the way that gamers love, in that everything made sense that way. So, you've got meeples for games, but it's also wood, which you're going to use, meeples, which are workers that are going to enhance your factory, and also there are wood components within the games. And, the cards were contracts for the things you're going to build, but they're also cards that you need because lots of games need cards. And he went on with all of those different things. We're like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It thematically comes together so well that I think Renee and I were talking about this constantly from that point on, going, okay, we really need to try this, and it sounds very, very exciting.
Ben began talking about the game, and I found myself leaning forward, just taking in every word. And he talked about it being a reverse Tzolk'in mechanic, and that's what hooked me immediately. You put your worker on the wheel in Tzolk'in, and you have to wait and wait as you turn the dial before you get your reward. By contrast, in the Game Makers, you put your worker on the board and you immediately get your reward, but the further out you put it, the greater your reward, but the longer until you get that worker back again, and that becomes a nice balance within the game. So I was hooked as he began to describe that, talking about what Ted just said with the dual use for every component. But it was the scoring, when you began talking about the scoring, like we were paying the check and we're getting ready to leave, and he goes, oh, and by the way, the scoring is very thematic. With scoring co-op games, you need to work together with everybody at the table. With war games, it's like 7 wonders. Do I have more war games than you, than you, than you? Engine building games are going to give you something right in the middle of the game to help you, build your engine. Set collection games, you got to have sets of them in order to do that. And I was like, Ben, that's the best part. Like, you buried the lead. Like, that thematic scoring is like absolutely the best part of what you just described about this game. And we went back home again to Bézier headquarters, and it was all we could do to just get started with the game. We were very excited.
Awesome. And this, reading your design diary on BGG, which I do recommend if you want to get deeper into the actual design and the process. Ben wrote a great blog on BGG. You can search it up. But in your blog, you described that this was coming off the success of Fromage, right? Which, if you haven't played that, I mean, it's amazing. Having those kind of aging workers and the simultaneous simultaneous play with the worker placement mechanic, you were looking to explore that and add a twist to it. And your initial twist, you said in your blog, was that it was going to be like more linear instead of a rondelle kind of form, which inspired you to, of course, make it into an assembly line. It looked like an assembly line, and that just made sense overall. And so you sent me some of your early prototype photos from some of your designs, which obviously looks way, way different from there. And yeah, so, and I also believe that, Ted, you also had a bit of, you had some say in this as well. It was linear. It came from the rondelle. Ben made it into this linear path, but then you came back around to the rondelle again. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how that developed?
We never saw the rondelle part. He hid the fromage stuff from us. That was the secret. So we just saw the linear thing. Yeah. And we were captivated actually by that. And then I think at one point we were talking about that, about having it being a circular thing, and it had 12 slices instead of the 6 it has now, which at the time made perfect sense. I don't know, we seemed that like, yeah, sure, 12 pieces, because there are 12 steps on the assembly line. And all of that made sense, and once we got it down to the 6 and covering up just one, having bigger sections, it really, the flow just changed, and it just became so engaging, and you couldn't wait to turn that wheel and uncover things and move through it. And then fashioning that wheel as a forklift steering wheel was also, that was like, oh, now there have to be forklifts, because that's the fun thing of, you're driving a little forklift around to pick up all those goods that are all over the warehouse and bring them back to make your good.
Yeah, no, awesome. It definitely came a long way since the early development, and I didn't play test this one early on, but I have had the privilege of play testing a few of your designs, Ben, early on in the process. And I don't say that lightly. I do mean it's a privilege when a designer invites you into their process to play test their game. It's something very, very special. And one thing that I found with your designs, Ben, and I think all of you will agree with me on this, is that even if the design is kind of half-baked at the moment, there's always something about it that really resonates. And I was trying to think about this, how to describe this. And I had just recently watched the Beatles documentary that goes behind the scenes about how they wrote the songs for Abbey Road and stuff like that. As you're watching the Beatles kind of play around on the piano and kind of sing lyrics, it's like these aren't fully formed songs, but every single one you listen to, you kind of tap your foot along to and just kind of get a groove to, even though there's nothing really there yet. And some of them became probably very iconic songs. Some of them didn't, but everything felt familiar. And everything just kind of, it just resonates, even if it's a small part of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm not calling Ben the Beatles of, no, I will call, you put me on record, I will call Ben Ross the Paul McCartney of board game designers for sure. But that's something with your designs that I really, even I've seen how far they've come, right? I've seen Gunsen recently, we played that way back in the day. And I've seen how they've developed over time. And that core, not even mechanic, just that core feeling is just always there. And when Renee, you were telling me about the early early part of this process, that is really what hit you. When you went away, your toe was still tapping right to the beat of that game for a long time. So really, really cool. But Ted, you did not really give the green light on this right away, did you?
No, we were the biggest concern we had, and Ben kind of mentioned this, but not really. He's like, it might be hard to get these 60 or so games that he proposed, and I was like, yeah, it probably is going to be. It's a challenge to go out to these publishers and find these games. And so Renee and I talked about it, and Renee's like, yeah, that's going to be a lot of work. And so she went, as the video said, she went to her friend Dan Halligan, the Obsession, and he just was like, yes, absolutely, we're going to do this. And that's awesome. I mean, to get kind of a great designer with a game that is well known by a lot of people on board right away was great. Also because Ben had done the Between Two Castles game with Stonemaier. Big fan of Between Two Cities, and he asked us to see if we'd be involved, if we wanted to do Between Two Castles of Anthony Ludwig. And so I got to work with Jamie a little bit on that. And so we knew Jamie from that, and of course Ben knows Jamie because he has a couple of games published there. Jamie signed on right away, and once we got a couple big publishers and designers on board, it was really just up to Renee to go, okay, now how do I package this and convince the rest of the world to do it? But that was the big stopping point, was how are we possibly going to get all these publishers to, so we want the great games, we want Azul, we want Wingspan, we want everything like this there. And Renee figured out how to do it. It only took us, what, 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah.
Just 2,500 emails, you know.
We put the cart before the horse in talking about like the development of the game, because before we actually did any of that, we came home from that Gen Con lunch, and Ted was like, I don't know if we have a viable game here, a viable product of a board game manufacturing game with real board games in it until we know people will sign and give us permission to use the boxes in our game. And so everything was kind of like handed over to me, and Ted's like, go get me 100 games, and once we have 100 games, I know we have a viable product, and I'll start development on the game. No pressure. So that is, again, I did start with Obsession's my favorite game, so I signed that. And Kins and Key Games, who has Galactic Cruise, just lives down the road from us. We're friends with them, so that was the second game that I signed. Then I signed Stonemaier. Jamie was like, you can have anything you want. So we signed several of those. And then I just began contacting publishers. So the way that I did it was like FOMO. Like my email was like, I've got Kayenta Games and Kins and Key Games and Stonemaier. Wouldn't you like to be a part of it? And then once somebody else signed on, my next email was like, I've got, Kayenta and Kins and Key and Stonemaier and so. Wouldn't you like to be a part of it? And then so my email just grew with everybody who said yes. And I was actually blown away in the beginning by how many people absolutely said yes. They were incredibly excited to be a part of the project because the whole point of this was to celebrate our hobby, to celebrate the publishers, the designers, and the artists. And I think that everybody caught that vision, and they really wanted to be a part of it. So it was very flattering.
I think one other thing, and that Renee did this from the beginning, is that Panda was on board with this because obviously everyone at Panda knows Ben, and they wanted to be involved and be a partner with this. And so by including Panda's name in those initial emails saying
Absolutely.
that they're going to be partnering with us to make this the best possible game, it's like, what can we do and have the best components and have everything that's just unique? And Panda has a history, at least with Bézier Games, of doing really, really cool pieces. There's all sorts of things that we've done with them that they've never done before and that we've never seen anywhere else. And they just do an amazing job of that. And I think a lot of people realize that at that point, that if Panda's going to be the one producing this, that's going to be a high quality game. And that was I think also one of the reasons they went to sign on right away.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's also an interesting choice, because I have seen many games in different genres taking, like, for example, movies, and they'll just make like a parody of it, or they'll be like, oh, it's like the action film that has lots of cars. Like they'll kind of, just make it work. But, Ted, you said, like, we're not going to develop this game further until Renee signs the actual game. Like, that was a very, very clear choice with a lot of obstacles. But again, it's amazing that that was something that was pretty much non-negotiable. So everyone can thank Renee for all that hard work, for thousands upon thousands of emails. But Jay, you saw the prototype. You saw the first game design. And tell me a bit about your first impressions. And then, because I don't know if you know this, Jay actually, he developed the solo mode for this. We'll talk about it as well. But tell me about your first impressions, and then talk a little bit about how you went to develop the solo edition of this.
Well, I joined Bézier in October of 23. And a few months into the role, as I'm just learning, getting on board, learning everyone, learning what my role is, who does what. Because we're a small team and everyone wears a lot of hats. And then Renee showed me, we have the game makers. I'm like, what's that? You didn't tell me about this. It's like, yeah, it's a new game. It's about making board games. I'm like, okay. And when we had it, it was just a conveyor belt. And I'm sitting there, I'm playing it with Ryan, our logistics manager. I'm like, this is really fiddly. I have to remove one tile to go here. I honestly wasn't sold on it. I could see that there was potential, but I didn't full it. And when Ted turned the conveyor belt back into the rondel, and then when we went from 2 forklifts to 3, then the game just really hummed and began to flow really, really smoothly. I equate it to those moments when you read a rule book for the first time and you think to yourself, this game is going to be good. And then you play the game like, this game is good. And I was completely sold on it. And I think actually the moment that I was really sold on is when I talked to Ted. I was like, Ted, I'm not seeing something. What am I not seeing? And he's like, well, we're going to have all these real board games out there. And I looked at Renee. She's like, how about 300 or so? I was like, wow, that's a lot. And so, but there was the idea of like, well, like maybe every year we could release a new deck of cards. And so the collection will grow with the industry. So if you're owning the game makers and you're playing the game makers, you'll see all those trends over the years. And you'll see, oh, now we have the roll and write years. We have the card game years. We have the big year of expansions. And we've all lived through those. And that's when I realized, oh, that's it. That's what I see. And I began to see, as a content creator myself, I began to realize, and all of you collect games. And when you look at your game shelf, you see games, but you really see all those memories behind the games. You see those moments when you played, like, oh, there's Scythe, there's Cosmic Encounter. I remember one time I yelled at Tom, and he yelled at me, and there was a big fight. And you collect those memories just as much as you collect the games. And the thing that I wasn't expecting is when you finally see the artwork of the games on the cards, you hear these moments of everyone, and all the playtest groups all said the same thing. They all like, I really love this game, but it doesn't do anything for my strategy. Or I hate this game. And I'm like, why did you say that? It's like, I wanted to tell you that I hated this game. And I was like, okay. And I'm not going to put it. I'm not going to build it. I'm just going to put it there out of spite. It's like, but that's actually good for your strategy. It's like, I don't care. And seeing how that meta affected the gameplay was something that I really loved about the industry, what I love about the community, and what I love about the hobby. And that's when I realized that game makers is really, really something special.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and you mentioned when some of the changes that happened to the game along the way. One being the forklifts, and you'd brought this to the Stonemaier Designer Days, right? And this was when the suggestion was made to go from 2 to 3 forklifts, which there's some resistance from you, Ben, I believe, on that change.
Saying 3. We need 3. We need 3.
Yeah, what's 3? 3 forklifts.
Me, right?
That was like, we should have 3 forklifts. I was like, okay, let's do it.
Oh, okay,
it was so much better. Yeah, it was a simple suggestion. It was changed the game for the better. Lots of things like that happened for various people, but obviously the designer.
But I think the bigger point there in the story is that Bézier and myself kind of threw the game over the fence to each other for about a year and a half, where I would pass it to them and they would do 3-4 months of development and then make a bunch of changes that I wasn't really aware of, and then they would throw it back over the fence at me and I would test all their changes, and then I would suggest some new things and throw it back at them. And so I feel like we went back 3 or 4 times, and somewhere in there we went from 2 forklifts to 3, and somewhere in there we went from the conveyor belt board to the circular board. But I think that process worked well, of you guys working on it, and then me working on it, and then you guys working on it, and we were able to kind of triangulate it into a better place. Yeah,
and games throughout development tend to take on a life of their own after a while, and of course you have a lot of games in development, a lot of games you've published. Ben, how do you feel? What's it like to see your babies grow up? Right, like you create these games, and then you let them off in the world into the publisher or even to the public, and then you see how they change and they react. As a designer, like how is it letting go a little bit, or what's that relationship like?
It's a little scary, you let it go, and hopefully, hopefully it doesn't get arrested out there. Maybe go, and hopefully it graduates and everything. But as a game designer, I've had both experiences where the game comes back from the publisher and it's better than it was, and then I've had experiences kind of in the opposite way, where I don't like the game as much as I did when I passed it off. So this was definitely the former. There was, like I said, about 1.5 years of development work, and I know Ted and Renee and the whole team at Bézier put a ton of effort and time into it. Ted is having so much fun with his like Cricut or 3D printer or all the fun stuff in your office. Making what you see on the screen right now is all homemade prototype stuff by Ted. As like this was an intermediate kind of version. You can tell it's starting to look a little more like it does today.
That one has the 12 wedges, I believe, in it.
12 wedges.
Yeah, there's 6 on each side.
Yeah. So, yeah, and the cards were still Euro Mini at that point.
Yeah, and you could see the public objectives in the center of the warehouse.
Objectives. Ben put a squash on that right away. He's like, yeah, that's not gonna work.
Well, like every time we tested it, none of the play testers paid attention to them because they're too busy building up their manufacturing, and we tested it again and again, and just no one was paying attention to it at that time.
But yeah, the game definitely improved during that development process, and so it was a good partnership because as a designer, you want the publisher to be active and involved in the development of the game, but to keep you involved as well. You don't want to be totally cut out of the loop. So the best product always happens when the publisher and the designer are both kind of working together on the development of the game, and that's definitely what happened here.
Yeah, cool, awesome. And then once it got to a public-facing stage of the game, you started bringing it to conventions, right? And this is where you started testing it. And so tell me, maybe Jay, tell me about the initial response as you started to show this off to the public and maybe a more public announcement.
What's really funny is that everything we heard, and this is like Funkade Town in Knoxville, where we're based, and The Gathering, I think, maybe. What was really funny was that what you heard then is very similar to what you hear today at Gen Con, where it's like, that's a big game. It's like, that's a lot of stuff. It's like, is everything on here going to be in the game? It's like, yeah. All of it's going to be there. Are there going to be trays? Like, yeah, that's in the game. Is this really going to spin around? It's like, yeah, it's going to spin around. People were really, really shocked. And then every single playtest group we had, they all said the same thing. They said what I said before. I was like, I love this game, but I'm going to build it anyway. It's not going to do anything for me. Then people really enjoyed the meta moment. And then someone realized, I could build the game makers in the game makers? What's happening? And people loved it. And I think I took a big pleasure in reminding people that one of the things that we loved about it isn't the meta aspect of it, but it was really celebrating the unsung hero of the board game industry, and that's board game manufacturers. Like, we could have all these great ideas, but if no one is able to engineer them, then we can. And I could look at all of you, and I know that all of you have been collecting games for a while, and you could see how games went from, Guess Who to the Tower of Orthanc and the Fate of Fellowship. Like, there's our engineering has gotten a lot better over the years, and having a game that celebrates that and seeing how that one company can affect, hundreds of board game publishers, and those publishers can affect millions of people is something that's quite special and unique.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you. Speaking of all those lovely games, at this point, around this stage, Renee had signed over 200 publishers, and then I might put the blame on Jay here, but I think what someone at the company at Bézier said, well, let's talk about the cover art for the game makers.
We're in staff meeting, and it's time to start talking about what do we want the cover of the game to look like.
Yeah, and I think everyone is bouncing around ideas, giant forklift, giant panda, and I'm like, no, let's keep it simple. Covers work best. In marketing, I always believe that the best covers are a single, iconic, bold decision. And to me, I grew up in the 80s, so School of Rock was something I thought of. So I was like, yeah, just a giant pile of games. And like, oh, cool. I'm like, yeah, we just put stacks of games, and we have all the art we can use the side art for the boxes, right? Right, Renee? Right?
Every eye in the staff meeting turned to me, and I felt my heart just like drop down into my stomach, because I wrote the contract to go and get the images of the games within the game, and I know that the contract only says the cover of the box. And I asked Ted, like, how many games do you think would be on the cover? And he's like, I think we could fit about 120 maybe. And at this point in time, I'm at like 2,000 emails for me to get the 200 games that I have, because it meant I had to contact the publisher, and then I had to explain it again a second time, like how we were going to use their image, maybe follow up, like, because they forgot to sign and get that back, and then, okay, here's the image that I need from you, reminder of exactly how I need it, and they send it to me and I save it and I thank them, like all of that back and forth times 100 plus publishers. And I'm like, oh, at this point in time, like, what's 500 more emails? Like, there's no point in steering now. But it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, because a year had gone by since I had contacted a lot of these publishers. And so the one thing that we were always going to do was be very upfront with the publishers on exactly how we were going to use the image of their game within our game. I mean, this is their intellectual property. It's their identity, and we're asking to use it. And so I always want them to know how we're going to do it. We're very transparent on exactly how we were going to use them. So I knew I had to go back and I had to send an addendum to a contract that had already been signed and ask for permission for the sides of the box and not just the cover. And I was like, wow, I'm at it. Like, why don't I ask for, you know, 1 or 2 more games that have been released since we last sent the contract out? So it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because we went from about 200 games to well over 350. There's 380 games now in the game. And so I actually love that it's just obscenely tall stack of cards. And it went from something that was still an enormously accomplishment, a great amount of games, to something that was even better. And we even had some fresh new things that had just come out, like right before SN, 2025. So anyway, it ended up being a blessing in disguise, but it just meant a whole lot more time at my computer typing out emails to get more permissions.
No, it really looks amazing. I think a lot of us can agree. Like, yeah, like it's on the cards, but on the box when you see it, it's like your eye is drawn. I don't know about you, but my eye is always drawn to like my favorites. Mm-hmm. Like I look at game makers and it's like that one. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So things are going well. The game is moving up. This is Gen Con 2025 now. This is last year, a year ago from today. The box is growing, as we see from the photos. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you made a very bold decision. It means maybe more for Jay. Instead of kind of bringing the box around to all the content creators, you decided to have them come to you instead.
Yeah.
Which was a good move. A lot less steps on your step counter.
Well, I think part of it is like that parasocial relationship you have with influencers, and all of us all know each other. All the content creators know each other. They all occasionally try to game with each other, and having them all there, and they finally get to play with each other, because content creators will talk shop and share stories all the time, but they don't have a chance to game with each other that often. And I think there's always 2 sides to a person. It's who they are on the street, and then who they are at a game.
And they rarely get to play at a forklift table.
Yeah, I remember Ted's like, we need some pizzazz at the booth, Jay. Let's get a giant forklift and have it hold a pallet and play on that. And we're like, yeah. Sure. And I remember Kevin, our trade show manager at the time, he just calls Fern, who helps run Gen Con, and like, yeah, we just want a forklift. It's like, yeah, do you need someone to drive? It's like, no, we're just going to park it at our booth. And like, what? It's like, yeah, instead of parking it on the side, just park it at our booth. It'll be okay. It's like, yeah, that'll be a couple of $1,000. And we're like, nah, it's okay. We went and found some local person there, and they had the same thing. It's like, yeah, do you need someone to drive? It's like, no, we're just going to park it. It's like, what? Yeah, we're just going to look at it. It's for display. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, we made a board game about forklifts. What? And so it became this huge thing. And funny enough, this year, when we looked at Fern, because you have to talk to Fern every year as a publisher, and like they had 2 forklift prices. There was like forklift rent to use, forklift rent to display. Because someone's there, it's like someone's gonna ask, so we'll just put it there. But that was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot about forklifts and pallets and making sure that there's plexiglass on it. It was a wonderful production and a great idea that I was like, so I have this idea, Jay, just do it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, boss, we'll find a way. So,
Awesome. I think it was that year as well that Jen, our chief marketing officer, she's dropped by the booth and she left a present, one of our giant panda meeples, which eventually made its way into the Kickstarter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think she forgot and left it on the demo table. And then so many people at Gen Con last year were like, "I want this panda. What is this? What is this panda? Is this the starting player token?" It was like, "No, it's a simultaneous game." But a game comes with a panda, right? It's like, it does now. Yeah. So we could not put it on the Kickstarter, and a lot of people ordered it and had fun, and people picked it up this year too.
Yeah, yeah. We see a lot of pandas in the wild now. It was pretty cool. Awesome. So let's talk a bit more about the production. We saw the behind the scenes at the factory video. So the rondelle, one of the big things about the rondelle was the wedges. And then I don't know if this is the initial design or if this came later, but they're modular, right? They can be swapped out.
Yes.
So talk a bit about the design and production decision on the modular wedges, and then some of the issues we came across during production on those.
It's funny that when people, you never really know, right? Like when you publish a game, it's kind of like opening an avocado. You never know what's going to be inside. You never know how the crowd is going to react. You never know if it's going to be beautiful green or if it's going to be all brown. And you worry about things when you send it out into the open, like are people going to complain about this or this or this? And we worried a lot about the wheel because it's the centerpiece of the game. And a lot of engineering and a lot of back and forth went about that wheel. One thing that we noticed with the demo copy was that when you rotate the wheel, it scuffed all those little wedges. And when I was arguing, like, we need to lift that lid of the warehouse wheel a lot. I'm like, no, it should be fine. It's like, no, it's not going to be fine. It's going to scuff it. And then what do? Like, after 10 years, it's scuffed, and then you send out replacement parts. That'll be a nightmare. So if you look at your copy, you'll notice that it's like 0.5 millimeter raised above, so the warehouse roof never touches the tiles. And then we had an idea of like, well, those wedges are actually double-sided. There's one with shelves and one that's a little bit more functional without the shelves. And we figured most people will use the beautiful shelves, so when you press a tile, when you punch it out, you'll notice that one side is always like curved and one side's flat because that's where the machine cuts it. So we made sure that the curved parts were on the beautiful side, so that way the wheel may not catch those sharp edges. So there are all these little things too, and then you have to think, well, there are holes on the sides where you could see the icon, and then how thick does it have to be? How wide does it have to be? Is the hole too big? Is the icon too small? And does it go out over the trays? How do you make sure that happens? And then the magnets themselves were a big issue because on our prototype, we had magnets, we knew what we were doing, and this is how we wanted it. But the first prototype, the Brody knob, the plastic wasn't thin enough. And the Panda engineers were worried because if the plastic's too thin, then it's going to break, and then people will complain. It's like, no. Like this part here has to be just a little bit thinner so the magnet can be closer to the other magnet, and it'll be a solid lock. And then even the magnet that's in the center of the warehouse wheel would sometimes it would fly off, and you're like, well, no, it's got to be stronger. It's got to be stronger. That means the plastic right here has to be just a little bit thinner, like a fraction of a millimeter thinner. And there was a lot of back and forth about making sure that the warehouse wheel was going to be okay because, I mean, as a gamer, sometimes a card gets bent and you just have to live with that decision. But if that warehouse doesn't work, then that's going to be a big problem. So there's a lot of back and forth.
We also increased the thickness of the top wheel to 3 millimeters, and as soon as we did that, we noticed that when you were looking at the component inside of what was available, it was hard to see because of the height of the wheel. So we increased it to ovals kind of at the last minute, and then as the production was beginning, we realized the wheel was just not staying in place, and a last-minute decision was made to put a double magnet to really hold it in place, and then that's what made it feel very deluxe and very secure. And so we were making decisions all along during production to begin to make improvements.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. If you think about how to make a game, how much are the designers involved, and how much are the developers and the publishers, how much is the factory involved. kind of like what Ben was saying with the design of the game development, it's there's a lot of collaboration between all the parties involved. And this one's great because you had the prototypes quite early. You've been testing it for years, really, at this point. So all those, like the wear and tear, for example, like you saw that in real time. Because when you demo a game all day at a convention, like you play it 100 times in a weekend, right? And that's going to tell you how long that game's going to last over the years you play it. So having that like initial feedback to come back to us at the factory to make those adjustments, well before your players had to find that out, is extremely valuable for the longevity and for just the overall user experience of it.
The biggest way that Panda was involved in the game was the forklifts that everybody loves, that are your player pieces in the game. Ted has a fabulous 3D printer, so all during our playtest we had wonderful 3D printed forklifts that we were playing with, and now we're starting to talk with Panda about making these forklifts, and we wanted metal to be included in parts of it because we wanted to have that weight and heft that comes from you can only have from metal. And the factory was really pushing back on it. We can't really mix plastic and metal. It's just going to be too complicated. So we tried like all metal forklifts, but suddenly when we needed to go all metal, you don't have that negative space where a person would sit in the forklift and you have the detail of the steering wheel and the canisters in the back. And while it had the heft, it lost all of the detail that we wanted. And the CEO of Panda was visiting the Bézier headquarters at one point in time, and we were telling him what we really, really wanted, and we were getting pushback from the factory, and he's like, this is not rocket science, like we can figure this out. And he went back to the factory, and I think he just had a big meeting with the production team there, and they figured out how to combine plastic and metal to give us that combo of the detail of the forklifts with the heft that we wanted from the metal. And I think you could see in that video from the manufacturing that it was like two pieces of plastic and one piece of metal, and it took two different tools that they had to create in order to make them and then combine them and put them together. But the overall end was something that was truly spectacular, and I think something that Panda can be very proud of.
Yeah, each one put together by hand.
Yes.
Smashed together with a machine, but put together by hand.
So 18 forklifts in every single game put together by hand.
Yeah, and that's so Fabien is the project manager for Bézier. So he handles a lot of the communication back and forth with the factory. And this hybrid, Bézier actually kind of was a pioneer of this a little while ago with Maglev Metro. This was one of the first games that we had seen that had this hybrid for the trains. And so, Fabien and Michael, I kind of like, this is something we can see we can do that can be functional as well. So it was very interesting to have that prior experience as well, to kind of bring it into something that's even more detailed than the Maglev ones for sure. So very, very cool. And then tell me a bit about the little special gift inside the box, the almanac.
It was very important to us that, if you'll notice in your copy of the Game Makers is an almanac that's twice as thick as your rule book. And we partnered with Panda on this because it was very important to us that every single publisher who joined us on this project had a chance to have their games celebrated. And so inside of this almanac is every single game within the Game Makers, and it shows the publisher of the game, it shows the designer of the game, the artists that were involved in the game, and it took an enormous amount of effort on Bézier's side to contact each publisher and to make sure we had the artists correct, the designers correct, and all of that was listed, and the name of the game was exactly as it should be, that we used the exact correct image that they had sent to us. And so we compiled that into the almanac as a way to thank the publishers and to celebrate everything that had gone into making this game with the boxes that we got from the publishers.
Yeah, it's a nice little almost like show program, right, of everything that's there. And if you go through it as well, you'll see any of the games that Panda had manufactured as a little Panda head on them as well. So you can kind of find your favorites and then maybe go out and find them out on the floor as well. And some of these cards, who was it that came by the booth or the lounge? Was it Friday? Who they brought the deck of cards to Gen Con, and they were going around getting autographs from all the designers.
Scott Brady.
Yeah.
Designer of Hughes and Hughes.
So he came, I saw his his post on social media, he came to Gen Con with all of the cards in the game makers, so a stack this big. He had put them into sleeves like trading cards, and they were alphabetically put into a binder, and he is going around Gen Con getting the designers of the game to sign the cards. And I'm actually mad that I didn't come up with the idea, but I love that. I feel like he took our almanac and he took it to the next level, because each one of these games is a person behind it, like Ben, who created these games, and he's going around and celebrating that designer by having them sign the card within the game. So guess what I'll be doing at my next convention? Taking my deck of cards to be signed, and I absolutely love that he did that.
Yeah, it's something really special. And as we kind of wrap up this portion of the presentation, this game was clearly made by board game fans, right? Like from the very beginning, Ben, like you worked in the board game industry. The mechanics, you were inspired by the theme of what you did on a day-to-day basis, which is literally helping publishers bring games to life. And going through this entire story of the design, the development, the marketing of it, the licensing. This game is, if someone would ask me like, what is it? I won't say, oh, it's a worker placement. If people ask me what this game is, it is literally a physical love letter to the hobby and the community. Something very beautiful to have on your shelf, and that it's kind of like, if you know, you know, right? Like if you're a hobby gamer, you go to Gen Con, you go to Essen, it's like, this is, you know what this is. Someone else might not know what that is on your shelf, but like, you know what it is. And so it's very, very special. I can't think of any better people in the industry to bring this to life. So yeah, thank you for such, giving such a huge gift back to the community and to the hobby. It's been lovely to speak with you all about this. With all of that being done, we're going to open up the floor to questions. Artie, yeah.
Thank you all so much. First of all, this is great. Are there any cautionary tales that you picked up in trying to build those relationships with the publishers? I'm sure overwhelmingly yes was the answer you got, obviously, the number of games that you have represented. And don't out them, but were there any no's?
Yes.
And like, why?
There were.
In terms of like brand protection, like, I don't know, I don't understand.
Well, any game that has an IP that's larger than the board game industry wasn't pretty much, you have to talk to Disney.
Sure.
You have to talk to Middle-earth Enterprises, and then that could be like a month-long conversation for a single card.
Ares Game tried the hardest, and kudos to them. I wanted War of the Ring. It's the #1 war game on BGG. I wanted it bad. And we probably spent about 6 months going back and forth, where they kept going to Middle-earth Enterprises just to try to talk to them about, what this was and being in it, and it just became too complicated. And it just wasn't worth it. So as you're playing the game makers, there's no Star Wars, there's no Lord of the Rings. It was just too complicated to have those billion-dollar IPs in the game. So there's none of that. We had a couple publishers who it is part of their business model to not have any kind of contract that has the wording in perpetuity in that contract. And the last thing that we could have was to have some publisher, after we have printed the games, they're involved all throughout the rule book on a card and all of this, to have them say, we want to pull out of the game makers. And we just couldn't have that. So there were a couple publishers who are not in there because it's against their business model to have in perpetuity in their contract. As we have booster decks that come out in the future, a few of them we were able to sign for something in the future, because that booster deck does not have any images that are going to be in the rule book or something else. So should they pull out, we just don't print that particular booster deck again in the future. But a couple of them were just like, yeah, we just don't want to be a part of the project. But I mean, there's about 3 of them that said no, and a couple that really wanted it but couldn't because of their contract, and then of course the big guys.
That makes you like more empathetic, right? Like you learning all that then kind of grounds you.
Yes.
As you engage with the other publishers.
The other cautionary tale is Asmodee. Asmodee was a whole different kettle of fish, and it took extensive negotiations on the part of our COO, talking with legal team in Asmodee, and Asmodee is all in one deck, all of their cards. We printed them all in one deck just in case anything down the road happens. Again, that's one deck that we just don't have in the game. But it was worth the extra negotiation on our part because you can't create a game about board games and not have Catan and Ticket to Ride and Azul and Forest Shuffle. And so we went the extra mile to accommodate Asmodee and to work on that contract, but it was well over a year of back and forth before we had a signed contract from Asmodee. And so worth it as far as those iconic titles being in the game.
Yeah, I want to add to that a cautionary tale that every publisher will tell you is that no matter how much you internally play test it, you'll never out play test the market. And I remember one play tester said, "Why do I need dice to build this game? There are no dice in this game." And we're like, "Oh yeah." And then we're like, let's make all the contracts, and something you may not know, all the components that you need to build any game, that represents the amount of components in that actual game. And so Ted was like, "Jay, you're responsible for games A through K." I'm like, okay. And that was about like a couple of days work. And I will tell you that not every publisher lists all their components in their rule book, which means that I had to watch like tutorial videos and watch videos and look at BGG images and try to figure out, is that die a dice or is it a block of wood? Yeah, it was a lot of work.
There was one particular game, Renee, that had a very specific requirements.
There's a game that if you see the card, it looks like there's nothing on the card. And there's been a lot of threads on BGG. Why is there something for me to build and I can't see anything in the image? If you look very closely, there's Kingdom Death Monster. It's just a black box that's embossed. It barely shows up, but it's there if you look very carefully. But I went back and forth with Adam Poots from Kingdom Death Monster. He hemmed and hawed. He didn't know if he wanted to be a part of it. He finally agreed to be in the game if Kingdom Death Monster would forever, in perpetuity, be the most expensive game you could ever manufacture within the game, and it would give you the most victory points should you go that route to gather the components to be in the game. So it's something that as down the road, as more games are signed, Ted will always have to make sure that as he is creating how much it costs to build a game and how many victory points you get if you build this game, Kingdom Death Monster will always be king. So
it's the most meta thing ever.
I think that's the only publisher that had that sort of restriction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So many of those 300 plus games to be able to actually make it all work. But that we were very fortunate that was the only.
But it seems very thematic because it's an incredibly expensive game to actually manufacture in real life. And so again, that theme just carries through. It's expensive to manufacture in real life. This is expensive to manufacture inside the game makers.
And for a while there was hard to find too, so it kind of, it's very meta. So yeah, awesome.
Any other questions?
Yes.
First, as he said, thank you so much. This has been great. Renee, you mentioned that the game you went for first that was your favorite was Obsession. Then what was the one you, as the designer of this game, were like, man, to me,
That's
it would
a
be
good
perfect
question.
if this game could be in it.
That's a good question.
That's a
I love
great
that.
question.
That's a great question that honestly I'd never thought about. I'd say my two favorite games are Seven Wonders Duel, which is in.
It's in there.
And Alchemists by CGE.
It's in there.
By CGE. Okay, my two favorite games.
That's a great question. I never thought to ask him that.
No, I remember Renee, you went around the office and you asked everyone on the Bézier team, what's your favorite game? I'll try really hard to get it into the game. And you got most of them.
One of our employees, their favorite game was one of those IPs that was never going to happen. So I was like, game number 2, second favorite, I'll go for that. But I got everybody's favorite or second favorite. So I felt really good about that. Everybody got their favorite in the game.
In my top 5, probably 2 or 3 is Search for Planet X, and the designer we happen to know, so that one was easy. So I was happy with that.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yes.
I just want to say that from a physical design game, this blew me away. My wife was watching me unbox and rebox many games, and the other night she just said, just shut the hell up. You don't have to keep saying, wow, I can't believe they did this. From the construction of the rondelle to even to little details. The fact that instead of giving us 3-player boards that we had to put together, it folds out, it folds back, and they're cut in such a way that you can easily accommodate 4 players or 6 players in the design. And again, something I didn't catch until I actually put it out on the table. And then the other thing, the fact that you did the layered bookshelves, which was a really nice feature, but by leaving those inserts in, you protect the edges.
Yeah, the little nubs.
I started pulling them out of the hanger thread. I was like, what the hell am I doing? I need to put these back in. And now that's part of what I have the players prep. Is, okay, now get your bookshelves ready. And so it just, the physical design, from concept to execution, is just absolutely brilliant.
That's great to hear, because we spent a lot of time on that. But I think one thing people don't realize is how much the manufacturer has to do with that. In the case of Panda, because of their experience, the breadth of knowledge, and their different ways that they use tools, that's why a lot of those things ended up feeling so good and feeling so exact in the way things work.
The thumb corners on taking the boards out, which
Yeah.
was one of the indicators that, wait a minute, what am I doing? This is meant to be there. Just brilliant design.
No, thank you. Thank you. Your user experience and user interface is something that I'm very, very focused on. I mean, my role now is product development, but I've been a senior project manager for many, many years. And one of the first parts of the process in talking to a manufacturer, talking to Panda, is we kind of do a consultation. We go through, if you give specs for your quote, we go through these. I try to get an idea of how the game plays. If you have a prototype or like an online prototype, I try to play the game if I can, or if I want to see it at a convention, a demo table, because those kinds of things, like the usability of everything in the actual, and from a gameplay perspective, is one of the facets. But the user experience involves everything to do with the game, not just the gameplay, not just the theme, not the art, not the components, but also the storage solution, the retail presence, the reviews online. Like, user experience is everything that involves the experience of that product. And so trying to look at the product from that holistic viewpoint is something we put a lot of focus on. And we do offer a lot of suggestions, and Ben knows he's done this for many, many years as well. We put a lot of focus on, like, okay, well, how's that going to come out of the box? How many players are there? Does every player have their own colors? Well, we don't want a plastic tray that has all the forklifts in one tray, because if you have 3 players instead of 4, you have to sort all the things out. So we want to have, player colors put in different sizes to ease setup. Like, those kinds of questions are something that we're always asking our clients on those initial calls. And you can't always get everything, right? As a publisher, you can't get it all in the box. Sometimes you have to make affordances. No, it's something we put a lot of focus on. I put a lot of focus on personally. I know Ben and a lot of your projects as well put a lot of focus on that as well when you're a project manager. And we know Bézier as well throughout the entire process, being manufacturing, publishing, and even from the design perspective. Like, Ben actually did he was the first one to write our presentation we did on Friday, which is game design with manufacturing in mind, which was a really, really good presentation about, as a game designer, thinking about product design and what the final product is going to look like from the very, very beginning of the process. And it's really, again, you missed this year, but we do it most years. We'll do it next year at Gen Con as well. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, I really recommend going to that talk. It's fascinating.
If I may, just real quick, I remember what I want to say. The other thing is for a game of this price point, by the way, I'm not a game designer. I'm here as a fan and a backer. For a game of this price point, a lot of times you go hard, and then you look at it, it's like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of components in there, but it's cut out cardboard. I mean, I opened this up, and even including the packaging tray, it's like, I have never, once I saw the game, felt the game, have never questioned the price point. It's in there. The one suggestion I would make for future editions, 2.5-sheet reboxing instruction.
Yeah, I made a whole video to help people out. Yeah, it's.
And I found the video, but I'm an old guy. I want it here.
Quick question again, sorry, but kind of on the flip side of that, especially the user experience, Bane or boon having this come out on BGA before it came. Like, I actually played it on it, and I really enjoyed it. And I actually could really kind of study the graphics that way, and it got me excited about the physical copy. So I don't know enough about the interface between that. So if I'm committing a crime, asking that question, I don't know. I think it's cool that was there. It got me excited for the physical copy.
I would say that the answer is honestly both. Yeah. More people got to play the game, more people got to be excited, but at the same time, as this gentleman said, the biggest charm of the game makers is seeing the production, seeing the components, seeing everything there, seeing all the physical trees, seeing like a wooden tree, you know, and knowing that each one of these trees, over 200,000 trees, were made glued together by hand. Like seeing the actual tree, putting it down, seeing the forklifts. You don't really see it in the pictures, but each forklift almost feels like a metal coin. Has a really good heft to it. There are a lot of little things like that that you don't experience on BGA.
For the components you say that are done by hand, like clicking the metal and plastic forklift piece together or gluing the trees by hand, do you mean like in production at Panda you guys did that, or like
yeah, in the documentary you could see the woman putting it together by hand.
It's online. You can have a look at the behind the scenes.
So did you guys just have an assembly line of styled workers just doing that for every single box?
Different portions of the factory do. This one does plastic, this one does wood, this one does your print components, and each one, you know, specializes in what it is they create. And so once they figured out this is what we want to do for the forklifts, this is the process in order to do that, the plastic factory was injecting the plastic part of it, the metal part of the factory was making the metal part, and then they had to create a machine that would then put those three parts together and push them, you know, so they locked together. But that was a person sitting there, you know, putting those parts together with that machine. Somebody else is standing in front of the plastic injector, you know, putting the new thing in, pulling the new one out, and it's just building in a bucket. And then there's another part for assembly. And then it takes a lot, everything is done separately. And then the assembly is done on a conveyor belt as the last part. But the publisher has to approve everything related to the game before they're going to assemble all of your boxes, because if any kind of a mistake is found, you want to be able to correct that one thing before you have thousands of boxes that have been assembled and shrink wrapped.
So there's a lot more, like, there has to be a human involved.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
There's automated stuff.
Yes.
That was the biggest comment that we got at the booth where people were watching the documentary, was that I didn't know there would be so many people in the manufacturing process. And you see so many hands actually touch the game before you even open it.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, sorry, last question, did you ever think, did it ever cross your mind to maybe, was it ever within like the design idea of like, maybe we just have like the metal pieces and the plastic come separate and have the players just click them in the box? Or was that just not possible?
That's no fun.
That's no fun.
When I saw the velocity of that machine that is like coming down and pushing it together, I don't, yeah.
I think when most people visit sorry, I was going to add on to that question, because I know you have a good story about this too. When you watch the documentary, a lot of people comment on that. There's so much like really high tech stuff at the Panda factory, like the robotic arm and all this kind of stuff. But there's also a lot of stuff that's handmade because it simply can't be done by robots, or it just requires a lot of artistry. Like there's, when you walk around and you meet the factory staff and you see what they're doing, there is so much artistry in what they do. And, you know, it's not just machines, it's not just running conveyor belts. Like there's a lot of care, like even silk screening, the meeples, the die cutting, you know, done by hand a lot of the time. And you watch them and it's mesmerizing. They're so good at what they do. And you just think it's just like, you know, we hit Control P and just the conveyor belt goes and things just happen. It's no. There's like hundreds of thousands of people over the course of this entire process that make these things happen. And I love that behind the scenes documentary. And if you it shows you what's behind the scenes in the factory. But actually, Renee, we didn't talk about this. For the final the final assembly, you came to the Panda factory. And tell us about that experience a little bit and how and the iteration.
So I flew to China to approve the mass-produced copy of the Game Makers, and I'm sitting in the factory, and I'm looking at what they're saying is the final version of, like, let's say the game tray, and I'm realizing this is not holding everything as well as we thought. They hadn't finished manufacturing them yet. They just, because they could do the trays very quickly, and I was like, so it's a Tuesday, can we change this just a little bit? So off the guy goes, and on Wednesday I come back to the factory, and I've got a new iteration of the tray. And I'm like, oh, this is much better. Ooh, I think we still need to move this because now this top wheel is not sitting level. Can we make an adjustment to that? I come back on Thursday. I mean, that's how fast this team at the factory was working. So by Thursday, I'm like, that's the final version of the tray. I approve that. And then I'm trying to fit something on the dual layered board, and I'm realizing that the pieces are not fitting as easily as they should. And the factory manager came over, and he's like, show me exactly what needs to go where. And I showed him all the pieces that needed to sit on the dual layered board on Tuesday. I came in on Wednesday, and there was a new dual layered board for me to look at. And I'm putting the pieces in. I'm going, this is good. Could we make this just a little bit bigger? I come in on Thursday, and then perfect. The board is absolutely perfect. But they had to create new die lines as they were then punching things out. And the factory moved so fast after that to finish punching everything out, and then assembling all the games, because we were determined to have this game for sale before Gen Con. Yeah. So how fast that factory works.
So the technological elements were just kind of jaw-dropping. It's amazing to see behind the scenes and whole process. It's kind of a two-part question. So when you have those shrink wrapped, you've proved it, it's shrink wrapped, with all these kind of symphony coming together. What is the element of logistics and shipping, right, to kind of like get that? So there's a publisher in the U.S. doing their first project with Panda, and so do you coordinate all of that shipping so that basically we work with Panda and that ultimately the product kind of shows up at our doorstep, but are there things there like tariffs or taxes or?
That's a very simple question with a very long answer.
Can to help coordinate that for smaller scale projects?
In some ways we can, yeah. It really depends. We can help you coordinate bulk shipping. We don't do fulfillment directly to consumers, but logistics. I mean, there are companies with thousands of employees that do logistics, right? It's a discipline all itself.
One area where you don't have you sort of leaves the factory, I would imagine it sort of becomes a different process, right? So
yeah,
you help connect those dots.
Yeah, we can definitely. I think it depends on how big the project is and where things are going. I don't know if Ted, if you want to mention a little bit, because this is kind of operations. You want to?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, Panda has always been. They will provide us with, okay, this is a shipping company we could use to get it to this place. Sometimes we have things shipped. We ship things to Essen. We ship things to the U.S. for distribution. We have shipping lanes for our Kickstarter things. So like one's in Europe, one's in Australia, whatever. And Panda will help us with that. We actually have, we now have a specialized, like you're seeing this, a company that does just that does the shipping. But Panda still has to work with them to make sure that it's basically able to go out to that ship at that time, and that's the right number of pallets are going there. So Panda works with us in a couple different ways. And I did want to say that back in the day, 2007 is when Panda started. That's when we made our first commercially produced product, which was Ultimate Werewolf, which is in its, how many printing at this time, Renee?
29th printing, something like that.
Well, that's one night, but regular Ultimate Werewolf, well, regular Ultimate Werewolf, at least 10 printings, more than that, I don't know. But a ton of printings, and back then, I think they did, I was only like 3,000 copies of that, which it's a lot for a very small game. We were a very new publisher at the time. But now that we're doing thousands and thousands of copies of everything, our one night games we're doing 50,000 at a print run at this point, and Panda does all of that. So they've scaled really, really well, and over time they've scaled really well. But you guys have been just amazing partners for us for the last 20 years, and produced millions, literally millions of games for us in that time. And so they can do these small little things as well as the really big, more complex stuff that we work with.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, we can definitely point you in the right direction or help with some logistics as well. And yeah, once again, it's a collaboration though, because you're going to have your own shipping plan that you want to do. We have a logistics team at the factory that's really, really great at that. They'll arrange the pickup. You don't have to call like, hey, pick up the package. Like, we will handle, within China, like we'll handle getting the games to the ship and all that kind of stuff as well. And but yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's been a good good 20 years. Any other questions?
That's it?
Well, I do want to mention, because we still have some time, that when it comes to the solo mode of the game, we had a solo mode that we had, and it was good. But then I was thinking to myself, if this is a board game that's a love letter to the industry and to the hobby, then the solo mode should be a love letter to solo gamers out there. So instead of having one solo scenario, I said, let's have 380 scenarios. And there are 380 possible scenarios for the game, because each scenario is based off of one game. So you could have the Agricola scenario, the Robinson Crusoe scenario. And I wanted to make each scenario almost like a little love letter to that game. So like the Gloomhaven scenario, you have to manufacture 2 games at a time, similar to Gloomhaven when you play 2 games at a time. The Robinson Crusoe scenario, you have to collect like 25 points of wood, because the first scenario in Robinson Crusoe, you have to collect 25 points of wood. Hadrian's Wall scenario, you're building a wall of war games at the top of your display case, because you're building a wall in Hadrian's Wall. And there are all these little things like that that I wanted to do. I only released 9 scenarios, like one's on BGG as a TI4 variant. But that's something that we plan to do more of, like in the future, and show that. And I wanted to create a toolkit for any BGG user, any board game user, that if they wanted to make their own scenario, that they can. Because that was my favorite era of BGG, when I went in there and it's like, oh, like I love battle lines. And like you look at the file section and like people did like, oh, here's a Simpsons version with Simpson art and like all these variants. And games that are long out of print, people did like P&P versions of. Like those are the things that I fell in love with it being BGG. And I wanted to give back to the community and help celebrate that part of the community.
Amazing. Yeah, very meta, and also the the community involvement is pretty cool, right? It builds that up. The unmatched community, for example, there's all kinds of like house-made heroes and stuff. It's really cool to engage with. So very good. Where can they find the Bézier booth?
We're at 237.
Very good. So if you want to go check out Game Makers, go touch the components and all that, check them out there. The Panda Lounge is just across the skywalk, down the escalators, totally Yui, and we're in the corner there. So you can check us out there if you want to come chat, check out some of our new games on display. Again, we do have a copy of the Game Makers there you can kind of play with if you like to as well. It's been a long presentation. Thank you so much. As you go, we made a very special. If you follow Panda and you follow our sample kits, we've made this like adventurers party of pandas who go on these adventures, and every sample kit we release has like new adventures of our pandas. And yeah, our CEO made a little passion project, and I'll leave you as you leave with our Panda Adventurers party.